being tech-centric as a society, it has all these implications on us that are unconscious oftentimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know if you've watched The Social Dilemma with Tristan Harris, and the way he described it I thought was really powerful, which he said we have primal brains and we have medieval systems that we're living in, and then we have like this godlike tech that we're not prepared to adapt to as quickly as it's changing. You all are really taking the step and proactively diffusing that, building a space that it's like active presence of mind.
Yeah. And I mean, my dream is that parents would come in and they would put their phones away, and they would allow themselves to engage in that dreaming and discovering and growing, because that isn't a childhood thing. That is a lifelong experience and goal. And I am a better person when I put my phone down and engage in play with my child.
Glockner died in 1876. It is recalled that the funeral cortege was the largest ever seen in the city.
This is the Local Legends Podcast.
What's up, legends? Welcome back to the Local Legends Podcast. We're telling small town success stories back here in the Glockner Speakeasy. And episode 43 with our next guest is a fabulous friend of mine, director of the Joanne K. Glockner Candyland Children's Museum, Megan Baum.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Megan, tell us everything about yourself.
Everything.
Or just who you are and what you do.
Wow. Let's be more specific. I'm Megan Baum, born and raised in Columbus, but my husband and I moved down here to the amazing city of Portsmouth 8 years ago. I'm mom of 4 kids, 7 and under, so I haven't slept for like a decade.
Right.
And I recently became the director of the Candyland Children's Museum.
Take a moment to share the vision of the Children's Museum. I mean, all jokes aside, this is an amazing project. It's been a long time in the works. You have some amazing people in the community involved. Just the design and just the time and attention and effort that you've put into this to like cultivate the children in the area is something that has kind of never been done before around here, right?
Yeah, I think so. I feel like I'm the humble recipient of somebody else's vision and like a foundation that was laid before me. So a couple of years ago, there were 2 moms in the area, Cindy Wolf and Kelly Babcock, who found themselves going to different cities, traveling to Columbus or Cincinnati, Chillicothe to take their children to different places to make memories. And they found themselves just thirsting for something here for children. Yeah, with young children. So this is where that desire was born in them for a place where children could cultivate a love of learning, to discover their interests and passions, to explore their world tactilely, through the way that children discover best, which is through play. And so that's really the foundation, was this desire for that to happen here, to not just be an opportunity for children in larger cities, but to have that experience here.
Yeah, no, there's so much to discuss as far as what's went into the Children's Museum and all the pieces of the puzzle that make up that picture of them learning through play. Just personally, I'm super excited about it for my children. Yeah, like being a mom of 4, when you watch them play, you can really see that just like how they're working out and becoming this complete person real time, right?
Absolutely.
Discover the world in front of them. So just to give them a space to accelerate that and do that freely has to have like all kinds of incredible implications in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think just even personally, when I take my children to experiences like children's museums, just seeing the different gifts that each of my kids have and the things that they lean toward or are passionate about, I'm not sure that I would ever see that had I not just been actively engaged in watching them play. And I think just for my own sake, there are moments that it sparks something within me as an adult, watching a child play and discover and learn in that way. If that makes sense.
No, it absolutely does. And we were just talking a little bit before we started about the concept of not just investing in commerce, but in culture, right? In the culture that we're building in the area. So this is just another brilliant piece of that. It's so easy in the short tail and in times of crisis like the opioid epidemic not to not to invest in that like emotional equity part of the city.
Yes.
Right. And so we're doing that in a whole new way with the children. Just start, Megan, by telling us kind of how this project got off the ground, what the first moves were for Cindy and Kelly to take on this monstrous project.
I think it was firstly them going home to their husbands and saying, I think I want to do this. And their husbands probably being like, are you sure? I don't know if our family's ready for that. But I actually, in just my few months of working there, dreams like this are not individual efforts. It's a community that comes around dreamers, I think. And I imagine that Cindy and Kelly's families had to wrap around their dream and that. So just really like having the courage to take the step to do it, I think is number one. Sure. And then, looking for the building, which we feel like we found the perfect building and historic Boney Fiddle. It just feels right. I know you've toured it and you know that there's just, some very unique characteristics to the building that just feel like they were meant to be part of a children's museum. And then, establishing a board, establishing Candyland Children's Museum as a nonprofit, taking all those steps. And then it was just like many long nights of going super deep into Pinterest or, like touring other children's museums and creepily taking pictures and storing it away so that we could kind of dream up what exists there now.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and in not too long, Megan, everyone in the community will be actively involved in the space in some way. I mean, it's attracted so much attention. I can't help but think people will just be enticed to bring their children, involve them. It's just such a different scene than, I guess, maybe what we're used to, where it's a lot of, get a babysitter so that parents can go out for the evening kind of thing. This is just like active involvement for the whole family. Maybe set the scene a little bit for first floor, second floor, third floor, how the building's laid out and what the intention of, each environment is.
Yeah. So we wanted to have spaces for children to play in a more holistic kind of way. So not just like one kind of play, one style of learning. And so you see that reflected in the museum exhibit. So there's 6 major exhibit spaces. So you walk in the front door, you get your tickets. There's a children's bookstore in the back called the Shop on the Corner, which has become one of my favorite parts of the whole museum. It's like so dreamy and cute.
Oh my goodness, yes.
And then on the first floor is our Let's Go exhibit space. So it's exploring motion and movement through transportation, but particularly through water, air, and on land. So right now, you see a 20-foot water table that spans pretty much the entire room. You've seen it. Yeah. Your children have gone home soaking wet because of it. But this water table just like came to us. It was something we dreamed of. And then it was way outside of our budget. And then it just so happened that the company who makes it, who is out of Columbus, another company said they did not want this water table anymore. And so they were like, we actually have one ready that could be shipped to you in like 2 months.
Oh, wow.
And it was everything on our dream list. So there's like a lock and dam system, river boats. I mean, it just reflects the area around us so beautifully that was like, it was meant to be. So we have this water table. We have a wind tube where kids can make little flying contraptions. The magnetic ball wall where these pieces can be manipulated. And the educational piece behind that is all about simple machines.
I spent more time at that wall than I'd care to admit, just for my own personal enjoyment.
I know.
Yeah, it's all very, what I love about these exhibits, and just to brag on the first floor a little bit, is that the way that the water table ties in with the gadgets on the wall and the gears and everything that kind of intersects, it really promotes this freedom to just endlessly play. There's no point to it. It's all very constructive kind of flow state things that kids can kind of push the limits of their play. How creative they can get.
Yeah. was taking some adult around recently, and they said, well, what did the kids do on the table? Like, an adult couldn't figure out what you would do with that.
Right.
And kids come in and immediately, I mean, could be there for hours. They just know how to just imagine in a way that adults sometimes forget. So that was really cool to see.
Well, I forget the source, but I was hearing someone describe some kind of case study they did with like adults and children with a paper clip, and how like an adult could list basically one use for a paper clip, and these like 8 to 12-year-olds could list like 100 uses for the paper clip.
It doesn't surprise me.
Which is just so interesting, just this idea of being open-ended. And
Yeah.
I mean, they're consistently solving problems, especially with the water table, when you're like damming up one side of the water table with a plate and the water rises, and how that affects the rest of the environment.
Absolutely. Yes.
They're constantly doing experiments like that, cause and effect kind of things. That
Well, even the ball track, I think that's where I love to see, like, 2-year-olds just are so fascinated by the cause and effect of, like, this ball shoots up and now it's on this track and into the water table.
Sure.
It's that wonderment.
It's a lot of, calculus-based physics, if we're being honest.
Oh, no. But
No, but it is inspiring, and I take that as a creative myself. Like, I take a lot of inspiration from watching my daughters play.
Yes,
watching how they interact with the
absolutely.
world. It just approach a problem in a really surprising way. When they're trying to get something off the table or something, it's often like hilarious.
Oh,
Like what kind of
I would
measures they'll
never
take.
have thought about doing it that way.
Right.
And I prefer that you don't, but it is cool. Like,
Yeah. So just a space for them to cultivate that.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be said about the first
Yeah.
floor. Also, maybe a little bit, and I'm sorry, we'll
No,
get
I love
into
it.
the second
Let's
and third
go.
floor. But I like when you're talking about the bookstore, I mean, some of those products and that tech, I mean, it's not like, it completely revolutionizes the idea of all the things you could do besides give your kid an iPad, right?
100%.
There's like screenless tech that reads them stories. I mean, incredible, imaginative pieces of tech that you can really see that the people that were designing these things were considering the well-being and the imagination and like the growth of the children.
Yes. Yeah.
I've never
Yeah.
seen some of those things.
Me
that
neither.
are-
Well, one of our philosophies at the museum is we want to be a refuge from technology. Now, I mean, obviously, we are on a podcast right now. Like,
Right,
you
right.
manage social media and all these different things. Like, we believe in the power of technology, but I think in seeing my own children, I can see the negative effects of it, and how easy it is for me as a parent to, at the end of a hard day, just throw a show on for my kids. But I know that they are most alive and most free and most themselves and growing the most when that's not the first thing, when they're building Duplos or they're, coloring on my walls or whatever,
Yeah.
whatever. And so we really wanted the gift store, the bookstore, the shop on the corner to be that, is to a place where kids could, the items that we chose were intentional because we wanted them to be that, items where kids would grow and learn and, become more fully themselves based on those things.
Yeah, that's a really powerful way to put that. And it's really teaching data hygiene. Like we live in a tech centered world, but we can teach our kids basically how to adapt to those things. Being involved in tech all the time, I can tell. I got to set up my own kind of personal boundaries because I'm 100% addicted to my phone.
100%.
Like just on like a chemical level.
Yes.
Like when we're sitting at the table, if I don't walk in the house before we eat dinner and just like throw my phone in the room, if my phone vibrates, I just instinctively, unconsciously pick it up. Yeah.
And we'll just as easily ignore the child or my husband in front of me who is saying something.
Sure. So you all being conscious of that, you're kind of ushering them into this new time where we're setting our kids up for success with their relationship with tech.
I do hope, yeah. I hope.
Yeah.
And you'll even see, we don't have technology in the museum. Even in our creative art space, our classroom, we've had a couple people like, oh, you should have computers or TVs, and it's like, that has its place, but we want it to be more the hands-on discovery as our mode of operation, not to have TVs everywhere. We do have one TV because it has our ticket prices, but that's it. So. It's easier to do that.
Right, that's for the parents.
Exactly.
We're not playing Coco Melon or anything, So tell us about the second floor, Megan. It's kind of a unique experience walking on the second floor. It's almost like you're stepping outside.
Yes,
you know?
very
Tell me
good.
more. Tell me more.
Well, you walk up the multicolored stair treads to the second floor.
That's an important piece of the puzzle.
It is, because I cannot tell you how many variations of those colors we did. And just sending like, would you like this one better or this? Should we have purple? So it was a whole process.
Does the stair tread come in that color? All that,
100%. So I hope you all appreciate those stair treads. But you walk up the stairs, and the idea is that you walk into Shawnee Forest, which is probably my favorite place in all of Ohio. And it is our Let's Perform place. So we have a stage where kids can put costumes on and perform. There's a tree bookshelf where a child could grab a book and go into the camper van that's there, this 9-foot camper van that kids can get into that has, you look up and can lay in the camper van. It's the starry sky. And inside of that, we have that Yodo player you're talking about.
Yeah, man.
So it is this product. So
it's like
I'm like, how do we explain the Yodo player?
I know it is. It is really a little screenless
unique.
block.
Yes,
Yeah, a little
it's like
screenless block that it's like a
little
chip
cube.
or some kind of hard. Yeah.
Yes, that you put a card in and it will read a story or sing songs, and just for kids to have this quiet space where they're just engaging in that kind of learning and experience is so cool.
Right. Is it? You just think about the difference between a screen and just audio alone, and there's just so much more imagination going into it.
Yes,
Not like, again, not to this this conversation on a podcast that you'll probably see on Facebook on your phone is not a lesson in
Anti-technology,
demonizing technology, but there are some really powerful alternatives and kind of substitutes for constantly being relying on tech. Kind of
Absolutely,
thing.
yeah.
Especially with little minds
ones.
that are still forming.
Yeah.
Yeah, love the camper. The
It
camper is over the
so
top.
awesome. And one of the things about the camper that we're really passionate about is we took many teachers and educators through the space as we were just developing all of these things. And one of the things that they did say is we should have a space for kids who have autism or sensory processing disorder, that they are going to come in, and while they'll love it and enjoy it, they may just need a break. And so the camper becomes that space for them as a quiet zone where they can just chill, relax, take a deep breath, and then enter back into the museum experience.
Man, incredibly thoughtful. How about there's some? Is it called the STEM room, or is it just kind of some
It's
kind?
called Let's Create,
Love it.
and it's now STEAM, which you'll appreciate:
Ooh.
science, technology, engineering, arts, and math.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know this. This
Yes.
is cool.
So our classroom, the Let's Create room, it's my favorite one. I go in there and just like decompress. We'll have a different science project and a different craft every week. That'll be a place where we'll eventually have art classes after hours, do some workshops and classes with, our local talent to teach kids about robotics or engineering, woodworking, to really engage children in things they might not have the opportunity to do in a school setting or anywhere in this county so far. So
Right. And it's just another third-party space where they can kind of tackle those projects, schoolwork, things like that on their own.
yeah, yes,
Very cool.
yeah.
And then there's like another side to that building. Tell us a little bit about the
Yeah,
market
so you
square. Yeah.
walk up. They're like staggered, the buildings. And so you walk into Let's Eat, which is our farm to table experience. So kids can play in a barn and then go over to our farmers market and put little food in their baskets. And we have a food truck and ice cream cart, and it is so cute. Little flowers, little blossoms,
Yeah.
floral shop where they can make their own bouquets. I mean,
Incredibly detailed, so much to play with.
Yes.
It really just kind of getting them in that mindset of farm to table is a really cool concept
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
Especially I'd love to see just how kind of that translates to the local farmers market and the idea of keeping things just local in general, that you can accomplish some of these things. Everything doesn't have to come from the supermarket, right?
Right. And we're going to bring in local farmers and other people, nutritionists, to have the opportunity to speak to the children and do programming in that room too.
Wow.
So that it can be a deeper lesson than just like, oh, I'm playing at the ice cream crate.
Yeah, and there's so much to say too about just coaching these kids up on the relationship between their mind and body and the nutrients and how they feel and their emotions and things like that. You know, because there's just so many variables, so many things that kids can't expected to understand without the correct education of like how, you know, that like fruit roll up is making them feel. You know?
What a reference.
Listen,
When's
I had a lot of fruit
the last time
roll-up.
you had a fruit roll up?
It was probably more recent than I'd like to admit, Megan. But
So sticky. I'm like, I forgot how it just sticks in your teeth so badly.
right. I mean, the nostalgia's great, but you know.
So true. But the reality is frightening.
But I wanted to bring up mind and body because it kind of segues to the third floor, which I'm particularly excited about.
A lot of time in.
I did spend a good bit of time there to just paint the picture for the third floor for us.
Okay, so the third floor you go up and the ceilings are much higher, so kind of the scale of it is even more incredible. But it's called Let's Move, so it's all about physical play, so gross motor skills. So our first little section is for children 0 to 4. So it's become the baby garden. I don't know why we call it that, but it's like a little baby containment area where they can even like practice their gross motor skills. So we have a bar where they can pull themselves up and look in the mirror, some tactile stuff on the side. And then there's mini climbing walls for little ones. And then on the other side, so in that side, there's a Ninja Warrior course. So we have 2 rigs set up with all these different obstacles that kids can do. My 2-year-old calls it the popsicle course instead of the obstacle course. It's so cute.
Dude, that's good stuff.
The best. And every adult walks in and just has to do it. Like, it's just awesome. It's so great.
Well, it's a big exhibit. It's
is.
not like, you know, when you buy one of those Fisher Price, like 3 feet kind of slide. And, you know,
it is for older children. It's supposed to be challenging for them. So we also have 2 ropes hanging for them to try to like pull themselves up to the top and hit these super annoying bells. And then a 10-foot climbing wall.
Did you scale that yourself to hang the bell, Megan?
I didn't scale it. My dad hung them, but I have raced my 7-year-old and beat him. You're welcome.
Who would win in a rope climb, you or Paul? That's what we want to know.
Definitely me.
Talking trash. I had to get it at least on the podcast.
100%. So.
Oh man. I'm sure your husband will listen to this.
Intense competitive side that comes out and things like that. So.
Well, yeah, and then you have kind of 2 walls. One corner of it is like just full scale. I mean, probably 10 foot of like climbing, right?
So like 10 feet climbing wall that I don't even know how big that space is, but it's pretty substantial.
Sure.
So good.
Very cool. So yeah, there's going to be some legitimate, really strenuous kind of physical activity.
Yeah.
If you can wear out your 12-year-old, I mean, that's the best spot in the city.
100%. Yep. And then we do have coming in January, somebody local, and a local engineer is making us a heart rate monitor.
Oh, wow.
So we will have another TV. Just saying that, as I said, a refuge from technology. That children will put their hands on it and a sensor will show on a screen different ways of representing their heart rate. So
wow.
Kids can like measure their heart rate, go and do the climbing wall or the Ninja Warrior course, and then do it again and just see the impact of that.
Incredible.
So,
yeah.
Things like that.
And it is cool to that SOMC wanted to get involved and be a part of the project.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about the third floor?
Sure. I'll get my piece on it.
Come on.
So yeah, you guys approached me about doing some mural work for the third floor, which was rather exciting. An iconography set we started with 13, but ended up doing 16, which was exciting. These little icons, characters that kind of personified the goals that we had for the space. So to talk about nutrition, to talk about movement and sleep and hydration and all these different parts of, you know, our relationship with our body and how we fuel our body, and personify that for the kids so they understand the impact that they can kind of unconsciously have or proactively, make themselves feel better, set themselves up for success for the day. I feel like I lived in a household that was healthy. My mom put healthy food in front of me. But, those kind of things just weren't widely talked about. She would say, we're eating healthy, but you didn't know why.
Right,
kind of thing,
right. I was just thinking that as you were talking.
Yeah. It wasn't like a regular part of the conversation or a part of the culture that they were like coaching my parents on.
No,
you know what I mean?
And that holistic side of health. I think that in health class as a child, we did learn about like the food groups, but not why that mattered, and not, taking care of ourselves mentally or drinking water or getting enough sleep. That was not part of the conversation.
No.
And I do think that we have seen through research, through studies, through lived experience, the importance of all those things.
Right.
So to be able to say in that space that health is not a number on a scale, or health is not, I ate a carrot today. Like health is more expansive than that, and to teach that to children.
Right. And, like I was saying, I mean, my daughter Olive was a big influence in how I decided to personify those things, because I can see she's the real-time example, and it's, just the most potent example, because you just care so much about them, of like how those things affect them, So when we were talking about, I think one of the items was breathe. And it's like this little set of lungs, and I just
frustrated almost, yeah.
But there's so many times where we call on Olive to when she is like having a hard time or kind of getting worked up, just to take a few deep breaths, and it's like amazing how just like a little bit of breath work kind of forces them to just kind of take their mind off that immediate frustration and just kind of just refocus a little bit, and just like breath work in general and its ability to, like put you in a different headspace.
Absolutely. Right? And I think that's the thing about this space is intentionality breeds intentionality. I feel like we came into this with a vision that was very intentional. And everything we've chosen, whether it is the exhibit companies, being very selective about those, our color choices, it definitely looks like IKEA threw up in there or something. But really wanting that to be intentional. And then as we've gone deeper and talked about, what do we actually want to communicate to young people here? What signage do we want to have? What educational opportunities? They really did become super intentional. And that just has been the spiraling effect.
Were there any like surprises in this process that really just enriched the whole thing for you? I mean, it's hard to plan out every aspect of this thing or how these spaces fit together.
Yeah. I think we were all surprised at how much work it has taken. You can see a job description or, the space itself, and think it's a certain way, but it just is so much more. But I think I've been so pleasantly surprised of how everything really has like welded together to be a holistic environment for young people. That I really do think that they will grow in their love. Our tagline is dream, discover, grow. And I think that it will happen, that they will dream about their future, that they will discover new passions, whether it's in the science room, discovering that they have a particular leaning towards engineering or, science or whatever it is, or that they're up in the physical play and realize they have this passion for, like this courageous athleticism, that kind of thing. But then also that they'll grow. I think it will be a place where children and families will grow more than they realize they needed to.
Well, yeah, that's a really good way to put that. Because, like we've been saying, a lot of these influences in just the modern world, when we're not slowing down, constantly having to like use tech, being tech dependent, being tech centric as a society, it has all these implications on us that are unconscious oftentimes. Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know if you've watched The Social Dilemma with Tristan Harris, but it's just talking about it's a Netflix documentary.
Yeah.
talking about how like the algorithms that are built in these platforms are like unconsciously affecting people, and everyone's like, duh, obviously, you know what I mean? But there's some pretty cynical implications, right? And the way he described it, I thought was really powerful, which he said, we have like these kind of primal brains, and we have these medieval systems that we're living in, and then we have like this godlike tech, right? Ooh. So we have this tech that we're not prepared to adapt to as quickly as it's changing, you know?
Yes.
And so, yeah, just that you all are really taking a step and proactively diffusing that, building a space that is the opposite, that is not just cognitive dissonance, but it is presence of mind. It's like active presence of mind.
Yeah. And I mean, my dream is that parents would come in, caregivers, grandparents, whoever it is, and they would put their phones away, you know, and they would allow themselves to engage in that dreaming and discovering and growing, because that isn't a childhood thing. That is a lifelong experience and goal. And I am a better person when I put my phone down and engage in play with my child. So I hope to see parents at that food truck eating fake food. Don't put it in your mouth, so I don't have to disinfect it.
All the kids are going to put it in there. So.
Or just like dads who like are terrible at drawing, sitting and doing art projects with their kids. And I dream that would be a place where families and relationships are formed in a deeper way because of that absence of technology.
Wow. Yeah.
Because that's what it has done for me. Those moments when I am intentional with my choices when it comes to technology or these things and set boundaries, that's when my family is the best. That's when my marriage is the best.
Wow. Yeah. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, you know, we're all entrepreneurs. We understand the power of tech and the positivity that can come from it. You know, it's a huge part of my job. It's changed my life. It's the reason we can have conversations like this and distribute it. Yeah. But I've had those painful moments where, you know, my kid's trying to get my attention, or Olive's trying to talk when she wants to play, and it takes me like 10 minutes to realize, like, what am I doing? Like, I don't need to answer this email right now, you know, kind of thing. This is like, it's like 7:30, you know?
Yes, yeah. I can be done for the day.
Sure.
There can be a boundary.
And so, yeah, y'all are, I think, going to have all kinds of effects on people, like you're saying, that are going to be surprise and joys for parents that engage in this environment.
Yeah.
Awesome. But we're about to see the finished product. We're talking about the finished product, but I want to get a little bit into and dissect just this process for you. So when you, specifically, Megan Baum, got involved in directing the Children's Museum, I guess where were things at? And I guess what were your first couple steps? Just talk a little bit about your experience directing a massive project like this.
Well, how do I want to start that? Ask me a different way.
Who asked you to get involved with the project?
Okay. Well, I previously had worked, my husband Paul and I moved down here 8 years ago to work for the Catholic churches. So we were youth ministers primarily, did Sunday school, and so many of my life experiences, I feel like it's almost a daily thing. We're like, wow, I'm really glad that I did that in the church because it actually is helping me here, even just administrative things or whatever.
Right.
But I was feeling just a restlessness, like we needed a change as a family. And so Paul and I had set out that we were going to pray this 54-day prayer, and every day we would say the same prayer with the intention of like direction in our jobs. And so you know, I'd interviewed in Columbus, we had looked at all these opportunities. We really didn't want to move back to Columbus.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but initially you were skeptical about moving to Portsmouth, right? Like your attitude about that has 100%. Completely changed.
My parents grew up here, and so I spent my childhood coming and visiting extended family, and just would say as like a high schooler, like, who would ever live here? It's like, this place is the worst. So even just like the process of saying yes to coming down here was a long one. And now, and was truthfully the first question people would ask us when we said we moved here from Columbus was, why would you move here? And it took us, you know, a couple months to be able to answer that question and say, like, you actually don't understand how good it is here. Like, we've lived in the big city, so many Targets, so many restaurants, all the things, but what the culture of Scioto County, Portsmouth, is different, and it is family centered. It is a community that wraps itself around people and fights for people and is courageous in their championing of people. Like, just the hope that's kind of been bubbling up in the last few years and the dreams that people have just said yes to. Like, you just don't see that everywhere.
Right.
And so we just kind of fell in love with Portsmouth, and we were just really sad as we were having this restlessness to even think about leaving. So we're saying this 54-day prayer, and on the 54th day, remember, the intention is for direction in our jobs. The board president of the Children's Museum, Justin Clark, invited us over for dinner and was like, I think you should consider being the director of the Children's Museum.
Wow.
So then, 3 months later, I'm still going back and forth trying to decide, but that should have been an obvious yes.
So were there were
Poor Paul Baum.
there were
went on the
21 more days of
roller
prayer.
coaster of his life. I was like, every day I was like, I want to stay and work for the church. Let's move to Columbus. No, I should say yes to the museum. So
I like that you're being
Anyways.
transparent about that moment of transition, though. That's such an important moment, and it's just going to happen eventually. You know what I mean? You don't always
Absolutely.
know what direction you're going, kind of thing. Yeah.
No.
But it's incredible, the alignment that, what you did in the church has had, just hearing you talk about it a little bit when you guys are over the house and things, like how that has aligned with your purpose here at the museum. I mean, you really fell right in place. It's incredible.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just, almost 15 years of working with young people, from preschool to college kids, and
Wow.
just like knowing young people, knowing like the adolescent heart, but also just being around children and just loving children, but forming a volunteer staff or training people in their jobs, all those little things just kind of led to this moment in time where I just really feel like I am where I'm supposed to be.
Right.
And have grown so much. I mean, I am not a business-minded person. I don't understand budgets. Just like having to learn those. And thankfully my board is amazing, has been so patient, but also generous with their gifts and talents and just guiding me and walking alongside me, that I just like the upward trajectory of growth in my life has been pretty incredible.
Megan, what do you think, if you were to give like a little bit of advice or insight to someone that's wanting to take on a project like this? It's kind of like a long, hard row, obviously, like a marathon, not a sprint kind of deal. So there's many components to it. But just general, what do you think has made this project successful, with just by your own definition?
I think more than ever in my life, I have seen the value of a team, like a community being a part of a dream.
Right.
And just seeing how profound it is when people lend their expertise and like their gifts and talents to the service of a culture, of a mission, of a project, if that makes sense.
Right.
It's just, even looking at our board, the very particular gifts that they have, how those mesh together has created this incredible opportunity for us to guide and to allow this dream to come to fruition. So I think just that idea of the community coming around
Right.
the dreamer.
I was going to say, Megan, you were talking about living in the bigger city, where which you sacrifice, leaving an area like that, you sacrifice a lot of amenities and just maybe more convenient resources, like there's a convenience to it. But it breeds a whole different kind of person, and the people that are accomplishing things down here in Portsmouth and kind of moving the city forward, the culture and the commerce, small town entrepreneurs have to be kind of more crossing into multiple domains all the time. There may not be a resource immediately available or someone who's done it before, so you kind of have to do that research yourself. You become more of a generalist, right? Someone that has to that just has to learn on the fly kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so we have a lot of people like that here, which has been a significant strength in making things like this happen. You know, it's like a unique venue that it was accomplished in a city of 22,000 people, which is an amazing thing.
Yes. Yes. And when you walk into it, I mean, there was a choice. Like, some of the exhibit companies that we bought from, they're expensive. I mean, they are world class. Like, when the guys were installing them, they were talking about when they were in Greece or, you know, like wherever, all across the world, all the different countries that they have installed these exhibits in. And that was a choice. Like, we could have gotten janky old exhibits that, you know, like, I don't know, you made in your backyard. Yeah. Connor. But we got the things that we did because they're high quality and because our children deserve them just as much as big city exhibits.
Right. And that is really the importance of using and kind of pulling from sources that are so high quality that kind of elevate people's perception of what can be accomplished, of like how high the bar can be for quality, you know, which is the another important piece of the work that you're doing. You know, Kelly Babcock, I'll drop her name because on her episode of the podcast, on episode 12 of her and the ladies from Ohio Creative Company, one of the things she said was that she felt like when she had moved to the area that a lot of people in the city or that just the culture had put a little bit of a ceiling on itself, you know, just naturally. That is just like just a little old Portsmouth kind of mentality, you know? And there's so much charm about the size of our city and just small towns in general. But that's not a limitation for what we can accomplish, especially, you know, with the tech and the resources that are available to us in this new age that we're living in.
Yes,
you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the Children's Museum is a manifestation of that. Yeah. Anything else you want to personally see as far as what families will get out of this experience?
Well, just speaking of like the culture, we do have like 4 guiding principles for our staff, or just 4 policies that reinforce our culture that I just like love to talk about, but I also hope people will be able to see. So the first is that every child would be seen and known. Having worked in youth ministry, especially in middle school and high school, kids get to a point where they just feel like nobody really knows them. Nobody really thinks they're significant. They just kind of have this crisis of identity. And so we want every child, when they walk into the museum, to feel like somebody knows them and cares about them and that they're worth investing in. So even when you walk in, children will have to fill out a name tag every time so that, like me at the front desk, I'll know their name, but, you know, Sarah up on the 3rd floor will introduce herself to each child, or as many as she can. Wow. Just that intentionality of like, I see you and I see who you are as a person. The second is that every adult in our museum is a mentor. Just looking at the statistics, the impact that mentorship can have on a child in terms of like their economic future growth or educational, you know, like all these studies, and that their holistic success in the future actually can be determined by whether an adult actually invests in them. And so looking at our staff, even if they're high school girls, just knowing like you can have an impact on this child, you playing with them and like helping them and guiding them, teaching them to collaborate can actually have a profound impact on this kid's life. And the third is that every staff member is a toilet plunger.
Man, that is a pragmatic step right there.
Yeah, it is. Is that we as a staff, whether it's our board of directors, or, you know, volunteer, whoever it is, like we are servants and we are not above plunging the toilet. And we're not going to wait for somebody else to do it. We're going to do it first. But you can imagine how great that looks on a piece of paper. Like every staff member is a toilet plunger. And lastly, that our customer service is our presence. That like being present to the children and families, like we are going to acknowledge your presence, but also being present to the museum facilities. We don't want you to come into a complete and utter disaster. That's why the food part, Let's Eat, is going to be the worst place in the museum to work because of all that fake food. But
And
you'll
just constantly,
see,
it's like picking
it
up
and then
decks
like,
of cards over and over.
Oh my gosh. But you'll see our staff members cleaning it up because we want every child that comes in to have that experience of like what it's supposed to look like, not just trash, basically.
Sure. Yeah, no, yeah, I feel like I can just tell a lot, just as like a general principle. The way that people treat my kids is like a huge indicator to me of what kind of person they are. Like if they take them seriously and show interest in them, want to carry some kind of conversation or kind of really take them seriously, acknowledge them, you know?
Yeah.
You know, that's a powerful thing, and I can just remember so many people that did that for me when I could offer nothing to them, you know, right?
Yes.
There was no kind of, you know, I didn't have any skill or anything like that they could benefit from.
Yeah.
So, Megan, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us where we can see everything happening with the Children's Museum.
Yeah, you can follow us on social media, Candyland Children's Museum, or at www.candylandchildrensmuseum.com.
Thank you so much for your time, and
Thank you for
appreciate
having
you. So many names to drop, but I appreciate you all's dedication and the space that you're making for kids here. Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everybody.